So welcome everyone. Today I want to focus on Agile leadership, which is actually a topic of my last book, The Agile Leader, Leveraging the Power of Influence. And the second book I wrote is called The Great Scrum Master, which is more like a practical guide for all Scrum Masters, how to become great. Now, how I started this whole journey about Agile leadership, right? So in 2010, I believe, I got 3 departments, the developers, testers, and hardware guys, with a goal of really like creating flexible, highly collaborative space, which is fast learning, coming with innovative, creative solutions. And the only thing I knew before was actually how to build well-functioning, high-performing, self-organizing teams as a Scrum Master, right? So that was my background. The original background was being a developer, but then I was a Scrum Master. And I was never a manager before. I didn't really, know much about it. I've been doing my MBA, so that's why I have so many like good ideas, like and concepts and everything. And that was maybe behind why did they choose me? I don't really know. But it was really funny because the only thing I know, I was like how to build great teams. And so when they asked me like, how would you run the department? Came up with your ideas about managers and structure and things like that. It was quite a big department consisting of originally 3 smaller departments. Right? So I thought like, hey, I don't want any managers. I don't need them. I don't want to build that hierarchy because it's not needed. All I need to have a well-functioning teams using Scrum-ish way of working, having Scrum Masters, product owners. So that's actually what we did. So when I first time came back to that management and asked them like, hey, my board, right? And asked them like, this is my mission. I want to make this completely flat structure, no managers, self-organizing teams. They look at me like I'm crazy. Ask a few questions, but eventually, when I point them to a couple examples and specifically the goals being more flexible, fast learning, creative, etc., they eventually said yes. So that was where I started, being a director of engineering, the biggest department in the company, but also HR. Having HR is kind of fun together with the biggest department because then you can technically change that organization like this. So that's what we did. Then I think the one reason why the board said yes to my crazy idea of having a flat structure and no managers, and eventually later on I came back with those ideas like I want to have no positions. They didn't say yes to that. I wanted to have a team member position, and that was it. And they said, no, that's not too fancy. They didn't say that way. It was a longer conversation, but eventually we agreed on calling that team member position engineer. Engineer is a fancy name for being a team member. So no specialization, nothing like that. We changed completely the way how we recruit, etc. But why did I say yes to all of my crazy ideas? It was because I didn't really sell them Agile. I didn't say I want to make it Agile. I want to, implement Scrum or anything like that. It was saying, okay, we need to be more flexible. We need to be more creative. We need to be able to solve those complex problems we are getting from our customers. And one way how to do it is to build well-functioning teams. And if you have team, there is like a higher collaboration. It works on the different things like autonomy and trust and things like that. So first key point from my talking here today would be that Agile is not your goal. It's just the best way how to achieve some of your more strategic goals, right? But I just came up, you asked me if you can record it, and I'm not sure if you started the recording. We have it from half of my talk, but anyway.
This is one thing I forgot to mention, that yes, it is recorded, but it just you are recorded from it.
Oh, I see. Okay, no worries. I just thought that you might forget. Anyway, so cool. Agile, not your goal. Then that's where most of you usually start, right? Traditional organization. That's my artistic picture of an org chart with those managers, departments, and senior, whatever. That hierarchy, hard-coded. in organizations. And now when you start experimenting and bringing change into that classical structure, which is like power structure, right? Then you really can start anywhere with like a team spirit, self-organization, bit of technical practices. Sometimes you may be more formal, using Scrum framework, extreme programming, Kanban, right? A lot of things. But the point is, you need to get your own experience on agile way of thinking and approaching things, and be able to make it happen in people's minds. So once you start experimenting with those yellow bubbles, right? And by the way, one of those yellow bubbles could be executive team working in an agile space, working in maybe Scrum-ish way of working, because they have to get their own hands-on experience as well, right? Then the whole organization moves, right? Start moving, and those yellow dots will sort of disconnect from that original power structure. And it's really ugly. It's like a washing machine sort of moving all the time. And it's in a way ugly and uncomfortable. People don't like it usually. There is a lot of frustration in different places. Of course, a lot of things, hey, we are now better things you can hear from organization, right? But it's a mess. These are the changes about. So if you expect your so-called transformation gonna be smooth, forget it. If it's smooth, it's not transformation. It's always like messy. And then those teams disconnects from those leaders and managers and org charts and processes and practices and everything, right? And eventually, it raises a lot of questions. So my, not my favorite question, but the most common question I got from the chairman of the board was actually, he always opened my door saying like, hey, who is responsible for something? I was like, the team is responsible. I was like, no, that's not going to work. A team can't be responsible. Who is really responsible? It's like, I guess I'm the only manager here, by title, right? So yeah, I guess at the end of the day, I'm responsible. No, you can't be responsible for everything. So there was like never-ending question, still struggling in his mind. We talk about it, etc., but it was still coming back, right? But eventually, be patient enough to bring those people along. It will click. Those black dots and yellow dots clicks together, and the whole organization creates this sort of a collaborative, creative, adaptive network of collaborative teams. And it's like constant movement, right? It's still moving, but it's sort of a nice, easy flow. Now, agile organization, right? Collaborative, creative, adaptive network. But that doesn't really resonate with people, to be really honest. It's true, but it doesn't resonate. So I was trying a different metaphors, right? And saying maybe, agile organization is like a living organism. Those pieces of your body are so-called independent, right? They can go to two different directions, but not that far away. In a way, they are still connected. So those teams have a higher level of autonomy. They can make their own decisions, but they are still bounded by that higher purpose or organizational goals, etc. Didn't really help that much. So I end up finally with a metaphor of saying that the traditional organization is like a big tanker boat, a huge ship with one captain on top, giving orders, and the rest follows. While the agile organization is like a flotilla of small boats, which has autonomous direction and everything, decision-making process, they still must have strong enough goal, purpose, which will unify them. So that's one of those key differences. If you don't have that purpose, you create chaos by any level of agility. So the purpose must be much, much stronger. You can imagine, like I was going to the scout camp, right, every summer, and we could play those games, like steal a flag from the other camp, right? And we got several smaller teams in that girls' camp, and we were trying to first win for our team, but also collaborate with the other teams, because at the end of the day, if one of us will get that flag, we are the winners, right? And you can say if that purpose is not strong enough, it was strong enough at this camp, but if it would not be, then we say, who cares about that flag, right? We better go swimming over there. Yeah, I want to do, reading here. I don't care about that flag either, right? So the purpose is the key, because that's what brings the direction to that sort of autonomous house in that agile space. Now, that's one of the key reasons why many organizations are not successful that much with agility, because very often they don't have that purpose, which will unify them. So then they implement frameworks and practices and everything, but then it's falling apart. So they put back that hierarchy, which is actually killing that mindset at the same time. And then are surprised if it's not working for them. So have that strong evolutionary purpose, a higher level of something. So I often ask executives, for example, some of you, you can ask yourself, any position, doesn't really matter, right? Imagine a time you would be getting the same money, from your organization, no matter if you're going there or not. You can choose. The money, all the benefits, the car, whatever you get from your organization will be the same. Will you be still coming? How many of you would be still coming back to work and working there and putting the effort and energy, right? And it's really funny. In some organizations, you see from us, the people like, yeah, of course I'll be coming. Yeah, maybe I take a 6 months vacation, travel around the world when it was still possible, right? But, why not? But then you see many big corporations where you see the discomfort from their eyes because they will never come back. They are here because they got a payment and they don't care about any purpose at all because it doesn't even exist. So, and that's the place where you actually need to start very often if you want to create something like this. Part of it is that leaders need to change first. The organization will follow. So when I actually was trying to create that space, I need to change my habits, my own personal behavior. I need to bring them that higher level purpose, like why are we here and why is it important? What is the vision? What is the dream I want to achieve? And I've got that dream saying in 5 years from now, we would be able to do this. And that's this journey. And here is why is it important. Bring the motivation in. Learn from feedback. Those type of things. But you yourself need to change first. There is no way you can start building environments like this without changing your own approach, your own habits. And that's tough. Now, how to start, right? That's the most common question I got. Like, okay, that's all so fancy. I told you a little bit, the purpose is one of those keys, right? The purpose is really important. But there is one more thing. And that's be able to see the organization through the culture lenses. And a culture metaphor, again, another metaphor for you, is like a clam, right? The sea creature, that thing which, is living deep in a sea and having those two halves. And sometimes it can click and sometimes it can go far away. But if you take those two halves away, the sea creature, the clam, will die. And this picture pretty much represents that, right? If you try to disconnect them, the organization will die, the culture will die. It just doesn't exist. It's just, you can't do that. So they are both interconnected. And the two halves in here would be the mindset and the structure. I start with the structure first, because that's the more tangible one. That's what people often relate to and ask about, etc. So the structure part would be about decision-making, the strategy, the tactics, the power, the positions, career path, rewards, payments, salaries, roles, right? Some rules, processes, guidance, governance, metrics. What do you measure really, right? Then on the other half, the top one, the mindset one, we have more like people behavior. Do they take ownership and responsibility? Are they self-organizing, self-managing, taking the autonomy? What is our identity as an organization? What are our values and beliefs? Do we have that organizational purpose, the star on horizon, right? We can all look to and go, that dream. And do we have trust between people? And is that trust team only related or organizational wide? Can they collaborate? Is it safe environment? And by safe, I mean, for example, safe to fail. Are you afraid of failure? Or do you actually take a failure as a great thing? Oh, okay, that was really a bad thing. Oh my God. But we learn from it. So it's actually a great thing. Fail fast, learn fast, right? Would be the agile mindset. All of that. Transparency, openness, right? Now, very often I have those questions where people ask me like, where would you start? Structure or mindset? Or they're saying, I can't really do that because in our company, I'm not a Scrum Master. They still call me a project manager. It's okay. Well, I was a Scrum Master for a couple of years. And I was actually all those years having a position of senior developer with a KPIs on my C++ coding skills. Did I care? No, I didn't. I was acting as Scrum Master because I truly believe that thing will help our teams to deliver more value and help our customers and eventually help our shareholders. And it was true. So, structure part, well, prevent some people from going somewhere or doing something because they are afraid or they feel they have to do it a certain way. But in many organizations, it will give you space to do whatever you want, you really believe in. So very often, in most of the cases, I don't start with changing a structure. I actually make those structure pieces irrelevant, right? I show by behaving of people, by how they work now, shifting their mindset first, that those things are not important. So one of those typical examples would be a velocity or estimates. I mean, if you ask me the training, I would tell you forget those things and says they are not useful in Scrum environment, in Agile environment, right? Because it's all about the business value. Now, if I go to organization where they are using it already, I would not really care about it much. So you use it, okay? Does anybody care about that? Anybody complaining about that? Is it too complicated or too much time spending? Well, then how can we get rid of them, right? Or are you happy with your estimates and use them? Feel free, right? People drink coffee, people are using estimates. If you enjoy that, continue doing it, right? So there are like two different things always, right? But I try to make those things irrelevant. My typical case are KPIs, individual KPIs, which were actually in our company irrelevant for years. I was just the first person who speak about it openly in front of the board with another thing saying like, hey, I actually want to do it differently. And that's why. It's like, you've been doing it like this, but you were not supposed to. I was like, yeah, but that was happening 2 years. So here is another idea how we can do it now to give more meaning to it. And eventually we did. We got a team-oriented goals and very different ones actually from those original KPIs, which are year fixed. Those team-oriented goals were like shorter cycles and could change and were actually self-driven. So the teams and people, individuals and teams were actually co-creating those goals and coming up with where they want to grow, etc. We shifted the performance evaluation system into coaching for growth and several other things. But again, I would not start there. You first need to change the mindset and the behavior of people, that piece of culture, to make all the practices, all the structure and power and those type of things irrelevant. And then it will actually allows you to work on that mindset even more. So that's one of those things I learned, that it seems that the structure part is more important and you have to start there, but I would not say so. Third tip, help others to become leaders. Because at the end of the day, you can never change the organization yourself. It's impossible. You need some other people to help you, to support you, to do the similar shift. So how can you help others to become leaders and support this weak collaborative culture, right? Very often we start with that culture clam and saying like, what kind of culture you have right now? Describe it, right? In a few words, say what are the keywords from a mindset piece, from a structure piece. And then draw another picture, sort of. Describe a dream culture. Where do you want to see it? And if it's more collaborative and more agile in a sense, well, then you need to help others to grow and become leaders. By the way, I forgot to say today, but leadership is not same as management. Management is hierarchical position. Leadership is state of mind. You are a leader. Every one of you. Some of you might not realize it if you're sort of sleeping and saying, I'm not. Yes, you are. It's only your decision. I want to take an ownership and responsibility, whatever happens. And I have this dream and I want it to happen. And then being agile, that's the agile leadership in it. You inspect and adapt. You try to find the different creative ways how to get there. So I actually thought we can really build that organization around self-organizing teams with no managers and no like hierarchical structures. It was a crazy idea. I didn't know if it's gonna work, but it did quite well actually. We got much more higher motivation. We got customers who been coming back to us saying like we deliver to some extent. We have a service which no one of their other vendors ever have. And they can name it. What is it exactly? The newcomers were actually in one sprint, 2 weeks, able to start working and delivering value to the team. Not like the highest, performance in the team, but actually being valuable to the team. When I started, it took half a year before I was able to work. Right. So those type of things you can start seeing, right? But help others to become leaders. Wake them up, shake them a little bit, and help them to come up with their own dreams. How they can help others to become leaders and support the weak culture. So all over 3 tips, right? Agile is not your goal. It's just the best way how to achieve your goals. That's what I personally believe. You might disagree with me, that's fine, right? But it's not a goal by itself. So if you ever were pushed or told to start an agile transformation because agile is great, well, forget it, ask questions. Why do you think it's great? And what are we expecting to get at the end? Once we are agile, what's going to be different? Coach them a little bit, but figure that out. Agile is not your goal. It might be still a good idea, even if they don't know why, but you need to help them to figure that out. Second, leaders need to change first. And that's, in my mind, the most difficult. If you want to have an agile organization, then you need to start behaving differently. Growing those leaders, supporting the teams, changing the mindsets, and then be bold and challenge those pieces of a structure piece of that culture clan, which become irrelevant. Hey, we have those positions, but we are not using them anymore. And so how about if we just change it? But that's going to be, hey, don't be afraid. One of those Scrum values are courage, right? So speak up, try it. If it doesn't work, by the way, you can always take a retrospective and, inspect and adapt. So it's safe to fail. Here's my contact. Some of the blog posts, 2 books, Twitter. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm easily to be found, so that should be simple. And I guess that's it. So, stop sharing. Do you have any questions? You're not the only one. Every change of who you are, your habits, your kind of way of thinking, etc., is tough. It will take a long time sometimes, a really long time. So one of those things you might need to become better at, personal experience, by the way, is being patient. So what I learned over the years working with organizations is just because you truly believe that this organization will benefit from being more agile using, I don't know, Scrum, Kanban, whatever, right? They might not see it. They might not be ready for that. So help them, but don't push them. Many times when I started, right, I was more into that, like, they have to change, and I was frustrated that they didn't. Now I feel like, yeah, they're not ready, but that doesn't matter, because all I think you need to do is to put a seed in their hands, right? And then they might grow to it 3 years from now, and that's fine. So be more patient is one of those key things, but it's super difficult, by the way. Because, if they only do this, it's going to be so great. And they are not seeing it, right? It is. And sometimes people are afraid to voice it. They feel somebody has to give it to me, but I don't think so. We actually started there as well. We were asking, like, what is the purpose of this organization? What is this slogan really means? Which was on all the walls, right? They look at us like, hey, what do you want? You just do your job, right? So we actually invented it. Was a couple of people who have been interested, and we actually give it back a meaning. We give stories, we link back what is happening back to those few keywords hanging on the wall. It was so interesting how that little change will actually change people's behavior, because then when we have some sort of a case where we was against those values, they say, but that's us. We should not be doing that. It's like so funny. And the newcomers were like saying, oh, I actually came here because you're all living those values. And you was like, wow, it brings a lot. So spend the time. And it was not a straightforward process. We were like, first frustrated, I guess, then waiting for somebody else to tell us, and then it was not happening, and it was still missing in that organization. I remember every Friday or whatever was it, we went for lunch, to that pizzeria, take a glass of wine and talk about those type of things. And then eventually we link it together with help of some other people and their stories, right? But then you need to make it consistent with whatever is happening. You can't say, hey, we are here for innovations, and then you actually kill every innovation, even thoughts about it, right? So those type of things, but that's possible. It's living somewhere in the air. You need to distillate it, get it out, and say it again with the stories. So one of the things I was talking to several people recently was about this virtual versus face-to-face, right? So what does it mean that for Agile? What does that mean for being an Agile leader, building Agile organizations? So I used to think that face-to-face is important, and I work with some virtual organizations before this era, right? And I actually realized that they have very often even stronger relationship among them than those who are sitting in one room. So I realized it's not about that. It's actually harder to achieve that. But the thing we tried to achieve by being face-to-face was actually having this we spirit, this strong relationship with each other, high trust, so we can collaborate. The collaboration is the key in every Agile, right? So sometimes people, the companies who switched and were not really Agile by mindset, they actually switched and go back to individual work. Every day, every week, they distribute some tasks to individuals, and then they're working in their living rooms or whenever else, in isolation mostly, and then delivering their individual work back to the so-called team. Well, that's not what a team collaboration is about, right? So it's not impossible by virtually, but they would imply one of those, so far, currently, the most common practices is like have a space like this, like a Zoom or Teams or whatever you are using, right? Where you see each other, hear each other entire day, you're just there. Similar if you've been sitting in that room. And then actually, if you do it this way, you hear those stories like, yesterday I was at that party and that was really all right at home, that happened to me, right? Also, you can go to a separate room to have a chat the same way as you would walk away, right? The technology is there now. So it's only our habits which prevents us from using it. And now you can see difference in the different organizations. You see organizations who's been doing it even before, so they didn't really care that much. They just swap, right? They see organizations which are on this other side of the spectrum, where the CEOs say, hey guys, you don't need to turn on the camera because that's going too much into your privacy and you're not expected, and blah, 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 blah. And then you have a team which you might never see it at all, because you see just those black tiles and useless. No one talks, no one shares anything. Well, then maybe go back to some individual task assignments where you have one kickoff and work for 6 months, right? And that's okay. But don't try to plug the collaborative Agile into that. No, is Agile a good answer to this? I still think it is, because the world problems becomes, or business problems becomes much more complex than they used to be. So now actually we have this difficulty how to handle that complexity, how to handle that unpredictability, and we don't know. So if you're like ready for that shift, maybe we need to learn different things: how to build relationships virtually, how to be so flexible that we can actually react to that unpredictability without even being bothered by that, but it's still there. But it's tough for some organizations. Have you inspired people to share pain points and discuss about, I think, possible solutions? I think that what I see there as the back of your question is a trust. So if you have a trust, people will talk. But if they don't trust each other, there is no way you can start it. And trust is built by working together, but sharing together also non-work related things. So there is a trust that I believe that if I, delegate a work, or give a work to one of you guys, you do it. That's a small level of trust, right? But then it has a higher level of trust, but you're not afraid to be vulnerable and show mistakes or problems, or just say, hey, I don't have a clue, right? Or I did something really wrong. And you just say it because you feel that it's okay in that space, because these others have your back and help you. So I think if you want to share people pain points, trust. And the trust needs to be built intentionally. So those organizations who work by individuals distributing tasks and they just stop seeing themselves in a cafe area and never really talk about, it doesn't really work. Therefore, some organizations are pushing back for return employees to the offices, right? You just have to go back to the office. And then there's a pushback. We'll see how that comes. I don't know yet. I'm like sitting here and curiously watching what's going to happen. Like Google was one of those examples recently, right? But there might be a lot of others. So, but that trust is built by being together as people, hearing about your families, hearing about your hobbies, hearing about your problems at, on the way back to the job, or my roof is really leaking and I don't know what to do with it, right? Those type of issues, right? And if you don't have it, people won't share. Now, how to discuss possible solutions once you have that trust, that might be on another level, right? You must have a trust. Once you have that and people are talking about anything, they are not afraid to voice disagreement either, or having a constructive conflict, right? Well, then how to discuss the possible solutions is like being good at facilitation, right? Facilitation is the art. And I think safety is one space, but also open is some of those tools where you really go broad, brainstorming and trying to come up with crazy ideas even. So can you wake up people from, we all of us do it this way. So we actually were doing this. We wanted to shift to more creative space. And what we did, we the person who was initiating it, he started those crazy workshops, as we call them. The first one was about some Facebook something, development on Facebook platform. Like, what? We never did anything over like those fun zone, anything. We were like doing serious stuff like life critical, mission critical, saving people's life. And now he's coming up to our organization with Facebook. Come on, right? It's like big rejection and frustration from some people, but some people show up to just see what's going to happen. Some took it over, do something. Then we got two more. And then actually we start having very interesting ideas from like artificial intelligence, which are much closer to where we work. And people really start using that creative mind, saying like, hey, I know I read this and I thought it could be a good fit for that client. And can we start offering that? And it woke up, right? So sometimes bring a shock, right? And people will just say, hey, I'm here and here, there, right? Show them that it's possible, right? Success. Only success scales. So in many clients, a variety of people, including executives and CEOs, etc., but also people at the ground level, they didn't like it. They didn't believe in it. They can't imagine it. The only way how you can turn that around is actually don't push them, because you can't usually, as either employee or external coach. You can't really push people to change their minds. So all I can do is to actually bring them on a trip, on a journey, on a visit, right? And show them, hey, you see, come on, join our sprint review, and you'll see this and that. And can you see that now they're actually able to do this, comparing to those other teams who are not able to do that, right? So show them the impact. At the end of the day, talking about managers, if they are higher level managers, they usually care about money or customers or something like that, value, right? So show them that value, which is better. Success scales. If you're speaking in those like team level managers who are afraid of their jobs, well, that's a different story, because they are really afraid of their jobs, and for a good reason. So you need to help them to realize that they are still needed for the organization. And everybody needs to change. The developers, testers, those team level people, but also the mid management and executives. Everybody needs to change the way they work. But in my experience, they're still needed. 99% of cases, right? They're still needed. They just have a slightly different job. So I was expected to be doing many things. And I actually did them in a way, but very specific way, sort of like in a different dimension, right? So I was expected to give people feedback on their performance. I could do the traditional way, where we evaluate people, or I could actually do it by coaching for growth, which I choose, right? More collaborative, where they actually co-create their journey. So those type of things, right? Like bring them along, don't push, and show them the success. That's the only thing you can do, and show them there is a place for them. We need them as for the other ones. Well, actually, I would be more concerned if there is a blocker every time coming up at daily Scrum, because the daily Scrum is not here to voice it for the first time ever. They should talk about it and collaborate about it during the day. So I would be asking this question: are they taking care of those blockers or problems or impediments during the day? And if yes, that's fine. I don't have to do anything. Do they collaborate, right? Do they own it as a team? Now, the daily Scrum or stand-up meeting is supposed to be more like a step back, look at your sprint goal and say, hey, is our way of working together, how we collaborate right now, really effective, working to maximize the value towards the sprint goal or not? And if not, you change it, right? It's like a tiny retrospective focused on that way of working, but focused on the work, really, not on the processes. And now, even if you believe that they are afraid to speak up, or they have some, they just don't share them, well, then I'm back at trust, right? Most likely they don't have a high enough trust to share disagreements, share problems. It's not safe to fail environment. So I would be focusing on there. I just thank you for joining us today. If you want to ask some question later, feel free to connect with me over the LinkedIn and ask. And good luck with your agile changes and journeys.